Hi, listeners. Thank you so much for joining for the latest episode from the Lessons from the Playroom podcast. I have with me two incredible guests on a topic that we have never covered in this entire podcast series, and I know that this is going to be a very enlightening and enriching conversation. So I hope you have something to take notes with. Let me go ahead and introduce my special guests. I just want to say that I love these two women so much. Personally, professionally, they are the two women that are part of PIP Solutions. We have Karen O'Neill and Tara McDonald. I'm going to tell you a little bit about them as a duo. So they met about 15 years ago in a training. Realized that they had a lot in common, realized that they were destined to partner and create magical things on this planet for play therapists, and thus created PIP Solutions. So for those of you that are not familiar with PIP Solutions, it is an organization that provides high-level quality training and supports for clinicians, educators, parents as well, covering a whole slew of topics. You both are based out of England, although you have reach globally and people from all over can take your courses. I will let you both say a little bit more about PIP Solutions, but I want to say a little bit more about each one of you individually. So Karen, you're in a private practice, and this was fun to learn this about you. I didn't know that you were a nurse before you became a therapist. You work with adults, you're a play therapist, you're a TheraPlay practitioner, you're a clinical supervisor, you do EMDR, and you're currently getting your doctorate right now. And your research is quite intriguing. It's on how play therapists engage with attachment theory and non-directive play therapy and interpretive phenomenological analysis. Big words, big words. And then Tara, also in private practice, also work with adults, play therapist, TheraPlay practitioner, filial play coach, clinical supervisor. And then something that I knew about you a little bit, but got to learn more about you in your bio is that you spent a lot of time working for a nonprofit in Asia, delivering attachment-focused training to social workers, focusing on developmental needs of infants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And you're both in the process of writing a book on polyvagal theory, and hopefully we'll see it in the next year. But yes, fingers crossed. So welcome both of you. I haven't even announced what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about play therapy across the lifespan with an added focus on symbolic repair. And I'm like so intrigued because play therapists have so many questions. What does play therapy look like with teens and adults? And so thank you both so much for being on this podcast.
Pleasure. It's lovely to be here.
Yes. Yes. So Tara, let me start with you. Anything that you would like to add? Anything you'd like the listeners to know before we jump into this topic?
Well, I think it's really interesting because when we think about play therapy across the lifespan, the thing about play therapy is its title, isn't it? Because that's the clincher. As we sort of move through different ages and stages, the name changes. We call it expressive therapy or creative therapies when we're moving older. When we're working with younger, babies and infants, we might call it infant mental health. But fundamentally, what we're really interested in, what we want to talk about is the fact that essentially that is play therapy, and that play has a place in all, whatever demographic we're working with. Play has a place, and it is therapeutic play that we're doing. So it's really just thinking about giving people permission to be playful with their clients, whether or not they're working with an infant parent dyad, or whether they're working with, you know, an elderly person in their 70s, that playful component is going to be, we think, essential throughout the therapeutic and healing process.
I'm so excited to get into this. I know that one of the things that you're both going to talk about is what does this actually look like? So I'm excited to go there. Karen, anything that you want to add before we go there?
I don't think so. I would agree with what Tara said. I think just to say really that we know that play therapy has, you know, integrates a range of mediums, a range of modalities, and it can mean different things to different practitioners.
Mm.
And so being playful can mean different things to different practitioners. And there's no right or wrong to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's about giving us individually, you as practitioners, permission
Mm-hmm.
um, to be and to be intuitive about the work.
Mm, beautiful. So as we get into this, Karen, will you also just introduce, because I know that we're going to touch on this idea of symbolic repair. How do you want us to be thinking about this as you and Tara talk about play therapy across the lifespan?
If I may just say something about it to start off with, um, really, I thought about it a few years ago. I think as adult therapists, we hear a lot about reparation of the relationship in adult psychotherapy. We know that exists absolutely and happens in child therapy work, but it's not really named per se in the play therapy world in the work. Um, and my feeling was, certainly working with dyads over the years, that sometimes parents are not able to actually hold their children in that dyadic relationship when we're working with them, and it may be harmful. They may not be able to or willing to hold their children within the therapeutic alliance.
Mhm.
So I became curious about, well, we as therapists are there with the children, and we know that we're secondary. We can be secondary attachment figures for the children. And then I started to think about play therapy and thinking about, well, we are using the creative mediums, the creative tools, and through that process, that does support reparation. So symbolic repair was born out of that, really. The idea that we are using metaphorical, symbolic processes um, through psychotherapy to be able to support the healing process for the child, the reparation.
Mhm.
That's where it emerged, and just thinking about how then that can be utilized throughout the lifespan, which is what Tara and I are going to speak about in this podcast.
Mm, I'm so excited. Well, let's jump in. Where and I'll start with Tara. Where should we start in this conversation? Should we do it developmentally? Should we do
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Well, great. So let's go there.
Yeah. So we're going to start with talking about babies, and Karen's going to sort of give her experience and the way that she works with babies. I've done a lot of infant mental health work, but not for a while. Karen's in that process, in that world at the moment. So she's going to start us off there and think about what play therapy might look like when supporting infant mental health, which is, of course, working with the dyad, working with the primary caregiver or caregiver and the baby.
Great.
So Karen.
Hmm. So as Tara said, at the moment, part of my work is working in that area with parent and babies, parent infant mental health, trying to support the dyad. So what we would be looking at, really thinking about play therapy with this population, is certainly that it would be a dyadic piece with the parent and the baby. And we would be thinking about things like lullabies, nursery rhymes, infant massage, um, things like stories, playful stories, using the body to be able to support that. So those are the things that we would really be talking about, offering playful interactions.
Mhm.
Also thinking about the way that we gently, carefully, from a nurturing perspective, work with the body in those massage pieces, and the story play, which Janet Courtney talks about, the first play. So it's those sorts of things really we're talking about in terms of babies, and obviously the prosody, the intonation, those things that Colwyn Trevarthen talks about in his Parent Ease.
Mhm. So what you just said got my attention on two fronts, Karen. One is that if we're working in the dyad, we're obviously bringing in play to strengthen the attachment bond between the child and whoever it is that's in the room. But if there's been a rupture, then there's also the healing. So even peekaboo can be a way of repairing a rupture, or learning how to touch the baby in a new way that feels safe can then be a rupture. So I just have that in mind with what you were sharing of um, yeah, a beautiful strengthening on multiple fronts.
And we're going to talk a little bit about peekaboo a little bit later on, but just to say with peekaboo, we know that it is it's how babies really learn about relationships in those early days. Things like initiation of relationships, how we initiate relationships or experiences, how we perhaps maintain those experiences in the peekaboo, thinking about how we avoid, in the peekaboo, boo, and how the baby moves their head and avoids, but also termination as well, so endings. Many things in peekaboo that are important in terms of relationships, building and strengthening, incredibly important.
Absolutely. Tara, any pieces you want to add to that, or?
Well, I just think that it's just so interesting, because when we're working with that sort of, parent infant dyad, or actually parent child dyad, we're also very much holding the parent in that process. And I'm trying very hard. We're trying very hard to go developmentally, but it's so hard because when you're talking about infant mental health, obviously, Karen, you're holding the baby, but you're also holding the parent in that process. So there is that sort of interaction of play within that. I know that in my experience of sort of training social workers to support parents, so that they didn't relinquish their babies in the area that I was working in, it was just so extraordinary how, by giving parents permission to play with their babies and actually delighting in their babies and building that relationship through play, that really did have an impact on whether or not they decided that they were good enough parents for their child. Working in situations where there was, huge socioeconomic difficulties, that there was a sense that their baby would be, better held somewhere else. And actually it was through play that there were relationships that were actually strengthened, and that choice was changed, that decision was changed.
So
So,
huge.
so the impact of play in that dynamic it cannot be overestimated. It's huge.
Absolutely huge. Yeah.
It's a triadic piece of work, really, isn't it, if you think about it?
Yeah.
About
So,
those things.
so let's move a little bit older. I know now
Mm-hmm.
we're moving into the age where most play therapists get their training and
Mm-hmm.
feel a bit more comfortable. What do you want to say about that developmental stage that feels important to name?
So we're not really going to talk about children, so to speak, because we
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of covered. But what we did want to look at a little bit was kind of 3-4-year-olds, because although as play therapists, that is an age that we are trained to work with, and it's entirely appropriate. I think that we need to give ourselves permission as play therapists to really look at where the child is developmentally. And sometimes play therapy is not going to be play therapy. What I mean by that is, you know, children at that age still very much need to be delighted in. There still needs to be play for play's sake. And that as therapists, that's great. That, you know, the sort of doing of therapy, if you like, may not be necessary, because for some children at that age, they may not have been delighted in, they may not have had those sort of experiences of someone allowing them to just get on and discover and explore. That sitting back and reading a story to a child for the entire session, the prosody of voice, that sort of, you know, back and forth parentese conversation, all of that is hugely therapeutic. And you know, as a supervisor, when I supervise people, sometimes there's a kind of, you know, there's that question that therapists often ask, am I doing therapy? Is this therapeutic?
Right.
And I think, you know, the answer most of the time is yes anyway, but particularly with this age group, sometimes they need you to just be there, to be a sort of benign presence, and just allow them to explore, and that is the therapy in and of itself.
Yeah. It makes me think of how sometimes play therapists don't take it into account emotional age, and they're so
Yes.
fixated on you know, their chronological age. And what I'm hearing you say is that we may not even be ready to get into the symbolic nature of play yet. We still may be working on earlier milestones around, like you said, just exploring, being, relationship 101, and
Yeah.
that may be where we're at. And so how do we meet the child in that, rather than, oh, you're 4, so therefore
Yeah.
we need to draw, you know, or we need to whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with this age group in particular, we really need to be attuned to sort of stages of play. So the work of Mildred Parton, you know, thinking about where they're at, and actually, you know, a child might still be in the parallel play stage, which
Right.
doesn't mean that they're avoidant or that they, you know, don't know how to have a relationship. It means that developmentally, that's where they're at. And so just having a kind of much broader lens, and that you are therapeutically holding them very authentically. It's a holding position rather than sort of being a therapist, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes, beautiful. Yeah, thank you for adding that piece in. It's not talked about so much, so thank you. So, am I hearing now that we want to scoot through until preteen teen? Is that what we want to do now in the conversation?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so who
So,
wants to go there?
so I'm going to take this
Okay.
group of
Okay.
children, teenagers.
Yes.
Um, Interestingly enough, we also think that we feel that this group is also about almost pre-play therapy, but in a different way. Because if we think about how a teenager presents and what they need, really, they need us to get into their world. Really. I mean, we would say that with any child, any client, but teenagers need us to be creative, and we need to be thinking about maybe video games, we need to be thinking about music, we need to be thinking about tags, we need to be thinking about the way they dress, their piercings, their makeup, and being mindful but playful with that. So there is something about, again, the always the therapeutic holding, but how we perhaps put our responses to them, offer our responses, maybe more about not perceiving it as play therapy, creative therapy per se, but we are linking into something that is perhaps a little bit younger, that is needed, but really respecting the fact that they're teenagers.
Mhm.
Mm. Because I think there is that sort of some people say, don't they, that teenagers can often be sort of bigger children and sort of you know, with the sort of the brain plasticity and the workings maybe of a little one. So we feel that that's really important to hold teenagers in this way, but absolutely respecting as well where they're at.
I love the invitation to consider the things that that they're doing as their form of play.
Mm.
You know, just because they're not using a miniature does not mean that it's not play, or because it's not a puppet, it's not play. But music is play.
Mhm.
Socializing is play. You know, talking about their sports. That's a form of play. So I love the invitation to um, let go of the rigidity around the definition of what play means and what play actually looks like. I love it. Yeah.
And I sorry, just to add, I also think that there's a real fear of gaming and computer gaming and actually, really getting into that world too. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we as therapists all have to kind of be experts on every single game out there, but respecting that that is an entire world which needs to be respected and have curiosity about, because there is so much play. I mean, that is all about play. It's all about play. It's just a play that is that brings up a lot for the adults in their lives because of,
Mhm.
various reasons. And I think fundamentally because we don't really understand it very well.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that one in there. Also, sometimes I hear play therapists say, my client wanted to bring in my video game, and so I told them they couldn't bring it in, and I feel sad when I hear that. No, bring it in. That's that's your platform for the day. Go into it. Get curious about it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else we want to say about this particular developmental stage? Anything, Karen, you want to add in, bring you back to the symbolic repair at this particular stage?
Um, I think what I would say is that if we can enter their worlds, so if we just think about the gaming, then there can be so much reparation through that metaphorical experience for them, because that provides a lot of scaffolding. And if we can get the scaffolding, then we can start to, whatever terminology we want to use, whether, strengthening their ego, um, you know, building their confidence, whatever that may be. But I think the symbolic repair really shows itself within the teenage population, because a lot of it is metaphorical, but it has to be the right metaphorical processes for them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I'm even thinking the therapist's curiosity or even willingness to go into their world symbolically gives the message you're important and what's interesting to you is important. And
Mm.
and think of so many teens that are struggling with I'm not okay, or I'm not good enough, or I should be different. And then to have someone just say, I want to go into your world, I want to get to know you, and I want to get a sense of what's important to you. I mean, isn't that just so healing in and of itself? Of, well, I must be okay if someone wants to be in my world. Like there must be something cool about me. There must be something worthy about me. Someone wants to join me in this, in this place. So I love, yeah, it's so good. Yeah.
It's really, it's sort of making, we talk, Karen and I talk an awful lot about Dan Hughes' PACE model and using sort of playfulness, acceptance, curiosity and empathy. And, the curiosity certainly with the adolescent population is just absolutely vital. I mean, curiosity is important the whole way through, but that sort of, yeah, really showing your interest, really showing that you want to find out that their stories matter. And I think that's the other thing with the adolescent population is that, a lot of time you might be doing creative activities or, soundtrack or, as you say, art, but actually a lot of time it's going to be storytelling. It's going to be storytelling about their worlds. It's going to be storytelling about what's happening at school. And that's still playful. You can be playful with that. You can engage in that in a playful way. And again, delight in their experience, delight in their successes, delight in, you know, in the gossip, and just be interested and show that their lived experience is relevant and important when they're in the room with you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, let's keep inching down the timeline. So we've arrived to the adult years now. So do you want to talk about adult years as a whole group, or different parts of the adult years? How would you like to tackle this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk about it as a whole group. I think that there's just so much breadth for play therapy with adults. I mean, if we just look at adults as adults, not talking about parents yet, you know, we know as play therapists that it invites regression into the playroom. That happens. But actually regression doesn't stop, you know, when you hit whatever adulthood might be. In fact, there is a continuous regressive experience, particularly when we're, you know, looking at or exploring things that may or may not have, may have happened to us when we were children. So there's still going to be that lack of, being able to use left brain functioning or things that happened when we were smaller. So being able to use playful, interventions in those moments, whether it's inviting somebody into the sand tray or, asking them to express it through art, or just, again, asking people, having a curiosity about how do you play? Because, a lot of people don't play or don't give themselves permission to play. So even just bringing play up as a conversation and looking at it as being a really important function in all of our lives. I mean, it's something which we really need to do if we're going to be okay in the rest of our lives. So just having play as part of that conversation as we're moving through is just hugely important. And then when we're thinking more specifically about sort of parent group, a lot of times we as play therapists, for example, might ask or invite the parents that we're working with to play with their children. That might be part of something that we think would be beneficial for the child. But actually, who played with them? Did they ever have any playful experiences as children? I think one of the questions that I almost always ask parents when I'm working with them is, are you parenting your child in the way that you were parented, or are you parenting your child in a different way? The majority of parents are trying to parent in a different way. And my next question will be, and who played with you? How did you play when you were little? Because I think that when we think about the sort of demands that we put on parents and things that we want to help them support to change, we have to find out the very basics. And actually, for some people, playing is really frightening. It's not something they're comfortable with. And so even just asking those questions, and if you build up a good enough therapeutic alliance with the parent, then there is an invitation to be playful together. It might start off by asking them to do a sand tray of their relationship with their child, or, doing some artwork or something like that. But it not only gives parents their own experience of being able to express what's going on for them, it also invites them to know what their kids are up to.
Right. Yeah. So powerful. And yes, a lot of parents, so scary. Yeah.
I think what I'd like to add as well is that a lot of adults, when they come into the room, are very scared of the creative mediums. They really are. And we can see that in children as well. But with adults, it's very, very different. And I think we have to gently go into the play therapy with adults, keeping them safe, obviously, but also for them to feel that it's worth the risk. And it may be that we really do have to, again, model using the sand tray, showing them, and inviting them in quite regularly when you see that they're perhaps risk adverse, that they're really struggling. It may be that You just have to check that in every week.
Mhm.
Ready to take that risk.
I have a little story that I want to share that just came up as we were talking about this. I worked with a gentleman who was in his mid-50s, and he was had a very analytical approach to life and very cut off emotionally. And going into that world was really challenging. And but there was one day when I saw him looking over at the sand tray, and so I invited, "Are you curious?" And it was, well, what do you do with that? And he was just, what, kid, just play, you just play with it and whatever. And so anyway, I invited him into this the world of sand tray. And I won't go into details of what he created, but there was a particular miniature that he chose that ended up being really important, and I could tell it was important. And so I actually said, "Would you like to take it home?" And so I sent that one home. And it was about 4 years later, I got an email from him. And he said, "Lisa, I just have to tell you, we did amazing work together and da 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 da, da, but I still have that miniature on my desk. And that is the thing that I remember the story of what happened to that character more than anything else that we did in our entire process." And he still kept it. It was a little bunny rabbit. And he had this little bunny rabbit just sitting on his office desk. The power of it, right?
That's yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's just so powerful.
It's so powerful. Yeah.
I mean, I have a story to share. I worked with she was a little girl at the time when I first saw her. She was 7, and she had suffered a bereavement. It was a grandparent, and we worked together for quite a while. And then I saw her again when she was 11, and she came into the room, and there was a particular cat she used to work with when age 7. She came into the room 4 years later and said, "Do you still have the cat, Karen?"
Mm.
I was just, wow.
Mm.
Because that held so much for her. If you think about symbolic repair,
Yes.
it held so much for her in terms of her journey of grief.
Mm.
It was incredibly powerful, and that was a real lesson for me that you have to be really, really careful when thinking about tidying up your symbols or removing your symbols.
Yes.
They may not be used, they may not have been used for a very long time, but you may have a client who comes back again and is looking for that symbol.
Yes.
Mm.
Exactly. So, infants, 3 and 4-year-olds, teenagers, adults,
Mhm.
parents,
Mhm.
elderly.
Elderly, yes, absolutely. I mean, I have some elderly clients, and I mean, it's a really beautiful process of, again, as we've said before, of being very gentle and titrating and just gently inviting a different way of perceiving things and exploring things. Again, particularly when there's an attempt to recollect or re-experience or remember situations that from sort of long ago now. And there's just something magical that happens when you give adults permission to be playful. There's something there about, the inner child does get woken up if it's held very carefully. And I mean, we know this. There are the opportunity for aha moments for people, or for a settling, it's just a real privilege to see that. So yes, I mean, with elderly clients, in the same way as with other adults, it's that process of just, I would say, unless you are presenting yourself as a creative therapist, that is what you're doing, and there's a contract that will be the work. Otherwise, there needs to be a secure relationship in place first, because it can be very frightening, as Karen has said. But I also think there's something around your presence, like a playfulness to you is also incredibly important, because I think that there is, you know, therapy is not always sad. I mean, a lot of the time it's sad, but a lot of the time there's laughter, right? And there should be a playful quality to it. So, for example, I might, you know, say something like, I bet you never thought you were going to be playing with a 49-year-old in a basement in Cheltenham, but, you know, it's happening, and we're, you know, so it's just being sort of that silliness, and yeah, it's still the up and down of delight and prosody in the voice that you use, and just having a persistently playful stance in that we, you know, I'm offering to hold you throughout this process. But within that process, we're going to explore all the emotions. We're going to explore play. We're going to explore joy. We're going to find ways for that play to come out, and for you to experience that in the outside world. And this is what it might feel like in here, in a place which is sort of safe and managed and contained.
I mean, what I'd like to add to that is I was just thinking about when I was nursing, and one of my specialisms was care of the elderly, and thinking about those elderly people who have dementia or Alzheimer's, and thinking back now, at the time I wasn't a therapist, but actually how play was important to them. What comes to mind is a lady, a small lady. She was in her 80s, and I remember I had some dollies that I took in, and she really hooked into one of these dollies, and she would be holding it and treating it like her baby. But I always felt that it was partly her, but also she was able to offer care to this dolly in the way that she had cared for her family. And she used to take it to bed, and it was so important for her. And again, just thinking about this kind of this, it was almost like a metaphorical attachment for her. If we think about symbolic repair, that was really important for her. And she used to sing to the dolly and talk to the dolly, all of those things that were so important. So maybe that wasn't play therapy per se, but there was something about the therapeutic holding of her in that process which was so powerful and gave her joy. That's joy in her day when she could get up and be with her baby.
So I'm going to zoom us out here. So Karen, you had said at the beginning that we were going to talk a little bit more about peekaboo. I don't know if you want to add anything more into that. I don't know if we want to bring in metaphor anymore, but just, are there any other little pieces that we want to make sure that we hit as we're rounding out this conversation?
And I think that with peekaboo, just to say, I'm a great believer that it's a forever game. It goes right across the lifespan. See it right from babies right through to adults. And what do I mean by that? Well, we of course we do the peekaboo with babies. Then we get to children, and this sort of develops into hide and seek. And I think we've always had those children in our play therapy room when they want to play hide and seek, and actually you're not really hiding, you know, your body, you can see your body, but you know, it's the anticipation, isn't it? So I think we all have those children, or you're where are you? Where are you? So, you know, that transforms into hide and seek. And then, of course, we've got the hide and seek with the adolescents, and that may be more about the sand tray or however that is. But I really do believe as adults, we also play peekaboo. It's more a reunion piece. But when I'm coming home from work, I arrive home, I open the door, and what is lovely about that is that my husband will delight in me. Hi, that is really, I think, the peekaboo for adults. and we do it in all sorts of ways as adults. So I really, really feel that it's such an important game across the lifespan that um, is there for all of us.
It just made me think of how often parents have the ritual of going in and waking their kids up in the morning. Good morning, or time to get up, and even that is has that flavor, that quality to it. Yeah. Mm.
And just thinking about how you might integrate that, I was just, Karen, you years ago, I remember talking to you about an adolescent I was working with, and we were this was 15 years ago, and we'd play Connect Four, and and you sort of suggested, because this was a child who was very much in their hoodie and hiding, and that I couldn't boo them, I couldn't get to the peekaboo. And so, as dropping in the little pieces into the Connect Four game, there was an opportunity for me to peekaboo through that in an appropriate way for an adolescent person. But even that, just kind of going, oh yeah, dropping the piece, disappearing, coming back, just finding ways, because that is, as you said, the reunion, the delight, the anticipation of hiding and the being found is so important for all of us. Some children will not have had that. They will not have had that delight experience. So thinking about ways that you can integrate peekaboo into your work going forward, hugely important. So just looking at that when you're working with older children, how can you still peekaboo them without infantilizing them?
Yeah, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. That's going to get the creative wheels spinning. Listeners, take that one. How creatively can you bring peekaboo into your work and into the relationship with your loved ones? Yeah, absolutely. Well, ladies, as we are rounding out our time here, I imagine that there are listeners that are thinking, wow, these two ladies are incredibly knowledgeable. I might like to take a class from them. So, how can they find you? Tell us a little bit more about PIP Solutions.
Yeah, so we have a website, which is pipsolutions.co.uk, and all our courses are online except for one. We have one very important in-person training that's happening in October this year. We have Lisa Dion visiting the UK. She's coming to deliver the 3-day introduction to synergetic play therapy in Cheshire, which we are super excited about. So we can't wait to see you again, Lisa. That's going to be fantastic training. So you can find out about that certainly on our website. Otherwise, our mission, our goal was to offer up CPD, so ongoing professional development for qualified therapists. So we have a range of different courses. We have just relaunched a parenting course called Parenting Engagement in Action, Parental Engagement in Action, which sort of looks at a lot of these playful ways that we can engage parents. And all our courses, as I said, are online. We have a range of accredited courses where you can get CPD accreditation points for that. And then we also offer a monthly refresher session. And for that, you don't have to be there live. You can get a recording. And those are ideas or suggestions that people have had on kind of topics where we just deep dive into them. So it might be looking at Winnicott's theory, or it might be looking at, what's our next one on? Cartman's drama triangle. So just deep diving in. So we've got a range of courses on there. And part of our deal is that anyone who attends any of our trainings, you've got 3 months post-training support. So, because we hate the idea, we've all been on trainings where you go on it and think, oh, this is brilliant, and then go to apply it and think, so
I don't know how to implement it.
what to do?
What to do, exactly.
I just say about training courses as well, what is important for Tara and I is that we think about our training courses that we put together, because Tara and I are always on training courses. We're always learning. We like doing that, but we also, we know that it's important that participants, learners have really good, solid training, and we hope that that's what we deliver through PIP Solutions. That is really important to us, and that was, I think, one of the draws of us coming together as well, that we both felt the same
Yeah.
on this journey.
Well, and I will vouch that you two are just phenomenal teachers and you put out amazing content. So listeners, you need another place to go and learn that from inspired trainers. Go check out PIP Solutions. You will not be disappointed. So
Thank you, Lisa.
thank you so much, both of you. What an enlightening topic. Just so great to pull us out of our play therapy, blinders, if you will, and really think about play in such a just a much larger context and the significance of that across the lifespan. And then Karen, this piece around how we really can do repair play at any point along the way. So any last words before I close us out?
Just to say this has been such a pleasure, and thank you very much for having us on. You can listen to all your podcasts, so it's going to be amazing to, I don't know whether I'll listen to. I will listen, maybe, without judgment.
Do a sand tray while you're listening.
Yeah, exactly. We'll play and listen. That's a very good idea.
And I just want to say thank you as well. And we really love our collaboration with you, Lisa. You've been a great supporter of us over the last, I think it was just before COVID, right? So the last 4 years now, and we have appreciated that, and
Learned a lot from you.
we have learned a lot from you, absolutely.
Well,
thank you.
My heart to both of you, and all the listeners, you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, for being a part of this podcast, for wanting to learn, for taking the time to learn so that you can support your clients in the best way possible. And as always, take care of yourselves, because you are the most important toy in that playroom. Until next time.